So the story begins, 1858 bounties. Jim starts killing. Anyway, here A shows a gun and asks him about it, to which King calms him down and says, "I'm looking for two brothers who trade slaves, known to everyone as the Speck Brothers." Dickie then says, "We are the Speck Brothers. What do you want from us?" King replies, "I want to buy one of the slaves you currently have with you." Then King asks all the slaves, "Who among you used to live on the Carrick plantation?" A slave, named Django, responds, "I used to live there." Hearing this, King approaches Django and asks, "Do you know the Brittle Brothers?" Django replies, "Yes." Then King asks him to name them, and Django says, "The eldest brother's name is John. The second is Ellis, and the youngest is Roger." "Here," King asks Django, "if you see these three brothers, can you recognize them?" Meanwhile, S tells King, "You can't talk to our slave like this." King responds, "I am a buyer, and I want to buy a slave from you." But S refuses to sell him a slave and threatens him with a gun. This angers King, and he takes out his gun and shoots S in the head, killing him on the spot. He also shoots Dickie's horse, causing Dickie to fall to the ground, and the dead horse lands on top of him, pinning him down. After that, King talks to Django again about the Brittle Brothers. Django says, "I can recognize them at first sight." Hearing this, King decides to keep Django with him. So he removes the shackles from Django's feet and asks Dickie for his price. But Dickie is crying in pain. Then Django takes S's clothes and rides his horse. King goes to Dickie and gives him the money for Django and the horse. Before leaving, he tells the rest of the slaves, "If you want to live like a grandma today, you should kill Dickie and run away." Hearing this, the slaves kill Dickie and free themselves. The next day, we see Django and King heading into a village. All the people in the village are shocked to see Django riding a horse because black people weren't allowed to ride horses. So everyone is staring at Django. Here, King and Django enter a bar. The bar owner gets scared seeing Django and runs away from the bar. Actually, Django was standing equally beside King, and in those times, a black man standing as an equal to a white man was a big deal. In the bar, King makes a drink for both himself and Django. Then he tells Django, "I'm a bounty hunter. I kill people who have a price on their heads." The government had placed a bounty on him. King explained that after killing a criminal, he had to deliver the dead body to the officers to claim the reward money. King then told Django, "I don't like making anyone a slave, but I need your help. That's why I chose you." King made Django an offer. "If you help me kill the Brittle Brothers, I'll pay you $75 and grant you your freedom forever." Just then, the bar owner brought a police officer, who demanded King and Django come outside and threatened to kill them. This angered King, and he shot the officer dead. Seeing this, the townspeople panicked and went to call their chief officer. Soon, the chief arrived and surrounded the bar. He ordered King and Django to come out. King replied, "I work with the government. Before you shoot me, you need to hear me out." The officer agreed, and King came out and explained that the man he killed was actually a criminal hiding under a false identity. Since that man had joined the police just 2 months ago, the officer began to believe King. King then showed him a warrant stating that the dead man was a wanted criminal with a $200 bounty on his head. The officer, now convinced, handed King the reward money, and King and Django left. Later, while resting, King learned that Django was married and that his wife, Broomhilda, had been sold by the Brittle Brothers to a wealthy man. Django said after helping King, he wanted to find his wife and buy her freedom so they could run away together. Django explained that Broomhilda had been raised by a German woman and could speak a little German. Hearing this, King, who was also German, was pleased. They then continued their search for the Brittle Brothers. They stopped in a village and made a plan. King bought Django new clothes and told him he'd have to pretend to be King's servant so no one would suspect anything. Django dressed in clothes of his choice, and they went to meet a trader named Big Daddy. Big Daddy got angry upon seeing a black man, Django with a white man and asked them to leave. King negotiated, saying he wanted to buy one of Big Daddy's slaves and would pay a good price. Big Daddy, satisfied, welcomed them and asked his slave, Bettina, to take care of Django. While showing Django around, Bettina said she didn't know anyone named Brittle, but Django explained they were 3 brothers living under false names. Bettina then recalled that 3 brothers had arrived a year ago and pointed to a man. He was Ellis Brittle. She then said the other 2 were punishing a slave girl in the stables. Django rushed there, saw John and Roger Brittle torturing a girl, and shot John dead. He whipped Roger and then shot him too. It was revealed that Django and Broomhilda had tried escaping the carrot plantation, and the Brittle brothers had brutally beaten them and branded their faces as runaway slaves before selling them separately. Soon, King arrived, and Django informed him that John and Roger were dead, and Ellis was watching over the slaves in the field. King spotted Ellis on a horse and shot him without hesitation. Big Daddy arrived with his men and pointed guns at King and Django. King explained they had come only to kill the Brittle brothers and showed him a warrant. Big Daddy had to let them go, but was still angry as his men were killed. King and Django took the Brittle brothers' bodies and left. That night, Big Daddy planned revenge and ambushed their buggy. However, King and Django had anticipated this and left the buggy earlier. When Big Daddy's men reached the buggy, King, hiding nearby, shot the explosives inside, causing a huge blast that killed many of Big Daddy's men. King then handed Django a sniper rifle and told him to kill Big Daddy, which Django did. Later, while dining, Django told King more about his wife. King shared a German story about a princess named Broomhilda, who was rescued by a prince from a mountain prison. This inspired Django to vow to free his wife no matter what. King advised Django to be patient and offered to train him as a bounty hunter, promising payment and help in finding Broomhilda. The next day, they reached a village where King gave Django his first mission, to kill a farmer named Smitty. Django hesitated as Smitty was with his son. King then showed him the warrant, which explained Smitty and his gang had killed innocent people and robbed them. Django aimed and killed Smitty, and later they hunted down and killed the rest of his gang in a snowy region. Django practiced shooting using snowmen and became an excellent marksman. They submitted the bodies to the police and collected their bounty. Eventually, they reached Mississippi, where they saw many slaves being mistreated. Records showed Broomhilda was now owned by Calvin J. Candy, the owner of a huge plantation. King devised a plan. He would pretend to want to buy Candy's best fighter, and Django would act as his expert assistant. Candy trained slaves for brutal fights and bet large sums on them. They met Candy's lawyer, who brought them to Candy's club, where Candy was overseeing a slave fight. King offered $1,000 for Candy's best fighter. Pleased, Candy invited them to his estate, Candy Land. On the journey, some of Candy's men mocked Django for being black, but Django retaliated and knocked one off his horse. Candy told his men not to insult Django. Trying to keep up appearances, Django acted cruelly toward other slaves, making King worry he might ruin the plan. He warned Django to stay in control so Candy wouldn't find out their real intentions. Later, they encountered some of Candy's men with vicious dogs. A fighter had tried to escape, and the dogs were sent after him. The fighter climbed a tree to save himself. Candy ordered him down and asked why he tried to run. The man replied that he couldn't fight anymore. Candy, enraged, threatened to kill him. Feeling pity, King offered to buy the fighter, but Django stopped him. He, Calvin, says that this man is of no use to them, so he shouldn't be bought. Then Vin comes to Django and asks if he feels any sorrow over the black man's death. Django replies that it's Calvin's slave, and he can do whatever he wants with him. Hearing this, Calvin orders dogs to be unleashed on the fighter, and they attack and kill him. After some time, everyone arrives at Candyland, where Calvin's most trusted slave, Stephen, welcomes them. But when he sees Django on a horse, He becomes furious and asks Calvin how a black man can ride a horse in front of him. Stephen, despite being black himself, hated other black people and treated them poorly. Calvin tells him that Django is a free man and a special guest of King, so he must be treated with respect. Then Calvin meets his sister Laura, who manages the estate. King asks Calvin about a slave girl who knows German, as he had mentioned earlier. Calvin remembers he had bought a girl named Hildy, who knew a bit of German. King says he wants to meet her before finalizing the fighter deal. Stephen tells them that Hildy had tried to escape, so she was punished and locked inside a tank under the sun. Calvin orders her to be brought out immediately. When they take Hildy out, Django realizes that she is none other than his wife, Broomhilda. Her name had been changed after arriving at Candyland. Seeing her condition, Django is devastated and almost pulls out his gun, but he controls his anger, knowing he must stay calm to rescue his wife. That night, Lara prepares Broomhilda and brings her to King's room. King speaks to her in German and tells her that he and Django have come to rescue her. When Django appears before her, Broomhilda faints out of joy. Later, during dinner, Stephen notices Broomhilda smiling at Django and Django looking at her. He suspects something and takes Broomhilda aside, asking if she knows Django. She denies it. Meanwhile, King proposes a deal to Calvin. He wants to take the German-speaking girl along with the fighter. Stephen interrupts and asks to speak with Calvin privately. He tells Calvin that these people are here not for the fighter, but for the girl, and she is probably Django's wife. Calvin then decides not to sell the fighter, but instead demands $12,000 for the girl. He humiliates Broomhilda by showing the whip marks on her back. Django is furious but does nothing. Lara scolds Calvin for insulting Broomhilda. Calvin sends Lara and Broomhilda inside and confronts King, saying he knows the truth now. Stephen brings Broomhilda back and hands her over to Calvin, who threatens to kill her. To save her, King agrees to pay the $12,000. Once the deal is done, Calvin prepares her freedom papers. As Django, King, and Broomhilda prepare to leave, Calvin insists that King must shake his hand. King refuses, but Calvin warns that if Broomhilda steps outside without a handshake, she will be killed. King then reluctantly moves forward, pulls out a gun, and shoots Calvin instead. Stephen is devastated. In the chaos, one of Calvin's men shoots King, killing him. Django kills Calvin's men and lawyer, then tries to escape with Broomhilda. But Calvin's men attack, so Django hides Broomhilda in a room and starts killing them. Eventually, he runs out of bullets and hides. One of Calvin's men captures Broomhilda and threatens to kill her unless Django surrenders. Django gives himself up. He is tortured, and Stephen tells him that Lara has sold him to the LeQuint Mining Company, where he will be tortured and beg for death. The next day, Django is in chains, being taken by LeQuint's men. He plans an escape and tells them he's not a slave but a bounty hunter. His partner King was killed, and now he's been captured. LeQuint's men ask the other slaves about Django, who confirm he was not a slave but came on horseback and is a free man. Convinced, LeQuint's men release Django and give him weapons. Django then kills them all and heads back to Candyland to rescue Broomhilda. At Candyland, Calvin's funeral is underway. Django retrieves Broomhilda's freedom papers from King's pocket and bids him farewell. He then kills the man who had unleashed the dogs on the fighter. Django rescues Broomhilda. When Lara and others return, Django tells all the slaves to run and kills all of Lara's men. He shoots Stephen in the legs, leaving him injured. Finally, Django sets the house on fire using explosives he had placed earlier. Stephen dies in the blast. In the end, Django and Broomhilda watch the house, burn from a distance, and ride away together. And with that, the movie ends.